The Great Council Chamber of the Galactic Federation stretched before Ambassador Min Jae-sung like a vast metal arena. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the curved rows of seats, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, growls, and musical tones that had taken him years to understand. Today, those voices carried anger and fear. Min sat in the human section, a modest cluster of 20 seats that seemed small compared to the grand platforms occupied by the major species. The Zeltharians commanded the largest section, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting the chamber's lights. The Brutarians occupied their traditional spot near the military advisors, their massive forms making the reinforced chairs look fragile. The musical Altarians swayed gently in their suspended seats, their harmonious discussions a stark contrast to the harsh debate echoing through the chamber. Chancellor Vexthara of the Zeltharians stood at the center podium, her crystal form pulsing with agitated colors. "The Devourers have consumed 17 worlds in the Outer Rim," she declared, her voice carrying through the chamber's translation system. "Every day we debate. More innocents die. We must act with strength, not weakness." Min had heard this argument before. In the 15 years since humanity joined the Federation, he had watched this pattern repeat countless times. Crisis would arise, emotions would flare, and species would demand immediate action without considering the consequences. He glanced across the chamber to where Captain Park Soo-jin sat with the military advisors, her dark eyes calm as she observed the debate. "I propose we use the outer colonies as strategic bait," Vexthara continued, her crystal body now glowing bright red with conviction. "We evacuate our important citizens and let the machines waste their resources on empty worlds. Then we strike with overwhelming force." A chorus of approval rose from several sections. The Brutarian delegates pounded their fists against their chairs in agreement. The Altarians' song shifted to a martial melody. Even some of the smaller species voiced their support for the aggressive plan. Min stood slowly, activating his speaker unit. The chamber's noise gradually died as delegates noticed the human ambassador requesting to speak. He had learned long ago that humans attracted attention not through volume or dramatic displays, but through their unusual calmness during heated debates. "Honorable delegates," Min began, his voice steady and clear. "We strongly advise against this course of action. The use of civilian populations as bait violates 17 Federation principles and will likely result in massive casualties. You really don't want to make us mad." The effect was immediate and predictable. Laughter rippled through the chamber like a wave. The Zeltharian section practically sparkled with amusement, their crystal forms flashing in rapid patterns that indicated mirth. Several Brutarian delegates actually roared with laughter, their massive voices shaking the air. "The humans speak of anger again," Chancellor Vexthara said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Tell us, Ambassador Min, what great military victories has your species achieved since joining our Federation? What terrible wrath have you unleashed upon our enemies?" More laughter filled the chamber. Min had endured this reaction so many times that he no longer felt the sting of humiliation. Instead, he felt something else. Something that his diplomatic training had taught him to recognize and control. Disappointment. Not in the aliens' reaction, but in their inability to understand what he was trying to tell them. "In the Battle of Kepler Station," Vexthara continued, "human forces served as medical support. In the Siege of Proxima, humans provided supply logistics. In every major conflict, your people hide behind others and speak of ethics, while real warriors fight and die." Admiral Koss of the Brutarians shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced seat. The massive alien had fought alongside human units before and knew their reputation among military professionals was different from their political image. He caught Captain Park's eye across the chamber, noting her perfectly controlled expression. Dr. Yoonhae-won, the human xenopsychologist, made quick notes on her datapad as she observed the alien delegates' reactions. Their body language, vocal patterns, and biochemical signatures all indicated the same thing. They genuinely believed humans were a weak species that had somehow gained Federation membership through political maneuvering rather than merit. The misconception was so complete that it had become a fundamental assumption about human nature. "We have heard human warnings for 15 years, declared a delegate from the Serpentine Confederacy, his scaled head weaving hypnotically as he spoke. "Always you speak of making you angry, of crossing lines, of consequences. Yet when have we ever seen this famous human fury? When have you ever demonstrated this supposed strength you claim to possess?" Min felt Captain Park's eyes on him from across the chamber. They had discussed this moment many times in private meetings. The moment when their warnings would no longer be taken seriously, when their careful diplomatic language would be dismissed as empty posturing. That moment had apparently arrived. "We are the most peaceful members of this Federation," Min replied calmly. "We follow every treaty, respect every boundary, and honor every agreement. We provide humanitarian aid, medical expertise, and technological innovation. We ask only that certain lines not be crossed, certain principles not be abandoned. Because you are weak," Vexthara said flatly. "You speak of lines because you cannot enforce them. You speak of consequences because you cannot deliver them. Your entire species hides behind ethics because you lack the strength to abandon them." The chamber erupted in approval. Delegates pounded, roared, sang, and clicked their agreement with the Chancellor's assessment. Min watched the display with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the debate. When the noise finally died down, he spoke once more. "Admiral Koss," he said, addressing the massive Brutarian military commander directly, "you have worked with human forces in combat situations. In your professional opinion, how would you describe human military doctrine?" The chamber fell silent as all attention turned to Admiral Koss. The veteran commander was known for his honesty and tactical expertise. His opinion carried weight even among species that typically dismissed Brutarian intelligence. Admiral Koss stood slowly, his enormous frame casting shadows across nearby delegates. "The humans," he said carefully, "are different from other species. Their combat doctrine is unlike anything I have studied. They fight with unusual precision and follow complex rules of engagement that often seem to limit their effectiveness." "Exactly," Vexthara interjected triumphantly. "They limit themselves because they are weak." But Admiral Koss raised one massive hand for silence. "However," he continued, "their tactical assessments are consistently accurate. Their strategic planning is thorough. And their warnings, in my experience, have always proven correct." The Admiral's eyes found Min across the chamber. "Ambassador, your people always speak of anger, of being made mad. Yet you are the most controlled species in the Federation. I confess I do not understand what you mean when you issue these warnings." Min met the Admiral's gaze steadily. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made several delegates lean forward in their seats. "Admiral Koss, I sincerely hope you never have to find out." The chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence. Something in the human ambassador's tone suggested depths that none of them had previously suspected. Before anyone could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the council chamber. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as the Federation's emergency broadcast system activated. The holographic display at the chamber's center flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of Federation space. Red markers indicated Devourer attacks, and there were far more of them than anyone had expected. "Priority alert," the system announced in all Federation languages simultaneously. Devourer forces have launched coordinated attacks on 47 Federation worlds. Civilian casualties are estimated in the millions. All council delegates are required to remain in session for emergency response coordination. As the full scope of the attack became clear, Min saw the change in alien body language throughout the chamber. The confidence and aggression that had dominated the debate moments before gave way to fear and uncertainty. The Devourers had struck faster and harder than anyone had predicted. Chancellor Vexthara's crystal form dimmed to a pale blue as she processed the tactical data. "This changes everything," she whispered. "We need immediate military response." Min stood again, his calm demeanor unchanged, despite the crisis unfolding around them. "We told you this would happen if you continued to approach the Devourers with purely emotional tactics. We warned you that aggressive posturing would provoke exactly this kind of response." The human ambassador's words cut through the chamber's rising panic like ice water. For the first time since joining the Federation, his warnings were not met with laughter. The Federation Emergency Council had been in session for 6 straight hours. The chamber that had once echoed with laughter now thrummed with desperate energy as species after species reported the loss of their worlds. The holographic display at the center showed a galaxy painted in red, each marker representing millions of lives consumed by the advancing Devourer machines. Ambassador Min Jae-sung sat in the same seat he had occupied that morning, but the chamber around him had transformed completely. What had begun as a routine policy debate had become a war council, and the casual dismissal of human warnings had given way to something approaching panic. Chancellor Vexithera no longer glowed with confident reds and golds. Her crystalline form had taken on the pale blue of fear and uncertainty as she addressed the assembled delegates. "The machines are adapting faster than our intelligence reports suggested. They are learning from each engagement, becoming stronger with every victory. My home system's defense fleet lasted less than 4 hours," reported the Altarian delegate, his usually musical voice reduced to a mournful drone. "The Devourers turned our own defensive satellites against us within minutes of arriving. The pattern was the same across the galaxy. The machine intelligence was not just consuming worlds, it was learning from them, incorporating new technologies and strategies with terrifying speed. Every Federation victory provided the Devourers with new knowledge, while every Federation defeat weakened the galaxy's defenses." Dr. Yoon Hae-won observed the alien delegates' behavior with professional fascination. Fear, she noted, affected different species in different ways. The Brutarians became more aggressive, demanding immediate action. The Zeltharians became more rigid, clinging to failed strategies. The Altarians became paralyzed, unable to choose between conflicting harmonies of thought. "We need total war," Chancellor Vexthara declared, her form flickering between blue fear and red determination. "Every world must contribute every resource. Every citizen must be prepared to fight. We must conscript entire populations and deploy weapons of mass destruction against occupied worlds." "The civilian casualties would be enormous," Min said quietly. "Billions of innocent lives lost to destroy machines that can be fought through more precise methods." The chamber erupted in anger. The careful politeness that had marked earlier sessions evaporated as delegates shouted over each other in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. "The humans whine about casualties while the galaxy burns." Vexthara's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Perhaps if your species had ever learned to fight properly, you would understand what war requires. You sit in your safe sectors and lecture us about ethics, while our children are devoured by machines." Captain Park Soo-jin stood from her position with the military advisors. Her movement was calm and controlled, but something in her posture made several nearby delegates fall silent. She had requested permission to address the council about human military doctrine, a request that had been granted more out of desperate curiosity than respect. "Honorable delegates," Park began, activating her presentation display, "I would like to share some basic principles of human military strategy." The holographic display shifted to show a series of tactical diagrams. Park's presentation was methodical and precise, covering concepts like proportional response, rules of engagement, and the careful escalation of force. She explained how human forces used minimal violence to achieve maximum strategic effect, how they protected civilian populations, even during combat operations. The reaction was immediate and contemptuous. "Your people speak of ethics while machines devour our children," sneered General Thakmor of the Brutarian Defense Force. "These rules of engagement are the luxury of a species that has never faced real war. Proportional response is a joke when fighting extinction, added the Serpentine delegate. The devourers show no restraint. Why should we? Park's expression remained perfectly neutral as she continued her presentation. She showed examples of human military history, carefully selected battles where restraint had led to victory and excessive force had led to disaster. The alien delegates listened with growing impatience. You have never won a major galactic conflict, Vexthara interrupted. Your tactical theories are untested against real threats. We need warriors, not philosophers. Admiral Koss shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had commanded fleets when humans first joined the Federation, and their military assessments had always been unusually accurate. Their tactical reports had a precision that impressed even veteran Brutarian commanders. But he had never seen human forces in large-scale combat. Never witnessed the full application of their military doctrine. Captain Park, the Admiral said carefully, you speak of rules and restraint. But what happens when these principles face an enemy that follows no rules at all? Park met his gaze directly. Then we adapt our methods while maintaining our objectives. The rules exist to preserve what we're fighting for. Without them, victory becomes meaningless. The chamber exploded in derisive laughter. The idea that principles could survive contact with extinction struck most delegates as absurd. War, in their understanding, was about survival at any cost. This is exactly why humans are relegated to support roles, General Throckmore roared. You lack the will to do what must be done. While you debate ethics, the devourers grow stronger. Min watched the exchange with growing concern. Not concern for human dignity or reputation, but concern for what would happen when the galaxy's leaders abandoned rational strategy for emotional reactions. Dr. Yoon's psychological profiles were proving disturbingly accurate. The alien species were panic-driven, abandoning careful thought for desperate action. During a brief recess, Admiral Koss approached the human delegation. The massive Brutarian looked troubled, his usual confidence shaken by the scope of the crisis. Ambassador Min, he said quietly, I have a question that has bothered me for years. Your military assessments are always precise. Your strategic analyses are thorough. Your warnings prove accurate. Yet your people seem to avoid displaying the military capability that such expertise would suggest. Min studied the Admiral's face, noting the genuine confusion there. What do you think that means? Admiral, I think, Koss said slowly, that either your people are far more capable than they appear, or they are hiding something important about their nature. Perhaps both, Captain Park said, joining the conversation. Sir, in human military history, our greatest victories came not from anger, but from the cold precision that follows it. The Admiral frowned. I don't understand the distinction. Min glanced around the chamber, ensuring their conversation remained private. Admiral, what we call controlled aggression is not weakness. It's the careful management of something powerful. We learned through terrible experience what happens when we remove those controls. Remove what controls? Koss asked. Before anyone could answer, the emergency session resumed. The reports were even worse than before. Federation forces, fighting with emotion rather than strategy, were suffering devastating defeats. The hastily organized fleets were being systematically dismantled by devourer forces that seemed to anticipate every move. Chancellor Vexthara took the podium again, her crystalline form now pulsing with desperate red energy. The outer rim is lost. Core worlds are threatened. We have no choice but to implement emergency protocols. The protocols she outlined chilled the human delegation. Mandatory conscription of civilian populations, the use of biological weapons against occupied worlds, the deliberate sacrifice of weaker species to slow devourer advances. the abandonment of every principle that had held the Federation together. These measures violate 43 Federation treaties, Min observed calmly. The Federation is dying, Vexthara screamed. Your precious treaties mean nothing if we're all dead. Done. The chamber erupted in agreement. Delegates who had spent decades building interstellar law were now voting to abandon it in a matter of hours. Fear had overwhelmed reason. Panic had replaced strategy. Dr. Yoon watched the dissolution of galactic civilization with clinical fascination. Her notes documented the complete breakdown of rational decision-making under extreme stress. The alien species were reverting to their most primitive instincts, abandoning the complex societies they had built over millennia. As the session continued, the human delegation remained oddly calm. While alien delegates shouted and gestured frantically, the humans sat quietly, taking notes and making occasional comments. Their behavior seemed almost inappropriate given the scale of the crisis. "Why are you so calm?" Admiral Koss demanded during another recess. "Don't you understand what's happening? The galaxy is ending, and your people act like it's a routine policy meeting." Min considered his response carefully. "Admiral, we understand exactly what's happening. We've been preparing for this possibility since we joined the Federation." "Preparing how?" "By studying every species, every military doctrine, every psychological profile. By learning the galaxy's strengths and weaknesses. By hoping we would never need to use that knowledge." The Admiral stared at him. "Use it how?" Before Min could answer, new alarms began wailing. The holographic display updated with fresh disaster. An entire Federation battle group had been destroyed, attempting to retake a strategic world. Thousands of ships, millions of personnel, gone in less than an hour. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the full scope of their defeat became clear. The Devourers weren't just winning. They were learning faster than the Federation could adapt. Chancellor Vexthara's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "We're losing everything." Min stood slowly, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the catastrophe unfolding around them. "We warned you this would happen. We told you that emotional reactions would play into the Devourer's capabilities. We begged you to consider more careful strategies." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had mocked human warnings just hours before. "But perhaps it's not too late. Perhaps there's still time to try a different approach." "What approach?" Vexthara asked desperately. Min's answer was simple, but something in his tone made every delegate in the chamber pay attention. "Stop making us ask nicely." The war had been raging for 3 weeks, and the Federation was losing badly. Every strategy they tried failed. Every fleet they sent was destroyed or scattered. The Devourer machines seemed to predict their moves before they made them, turning the galaxy's own tactics against its defenders. In the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the Federation capital, Chancellor Vexthara stared at the strategic display with growing desperation. Red markers covered nearly half the galaxy now, each one representing a world consumed by the advancing machines. The outer rim was completely lost. Core worlds were under direct threat. "We need more time," she whispered to her advisors. "Just a few more days to evacuate the most important systems." General Takmor, of the Brutarian Defense Force, studied the tactical situation with professional detachment. "The Devourers are moving faster than our evacuation fleets. At current speed, they'll reach the core worlds within 72 hours. Then we slow them down," Vexthara declared. "Whatever it takes." Ambassador Min Jae-sung sat quietly in the corner of the command center, officially present as an observer but effectively ignored by the alien leadership. Captain Park Soo-jin stood nearby, her expression carefully neutral as she watched the Federation's leaders make increasingly desperate decisions. Dr. Yoon Hae-won continued documenting the psychological breakdown she was witnessing. Fear had completely overwhelmed rational thought among the alien species. They were making decisions based on panic rather than strategy, abandoning long-term thinking for immediate solutions that would only make their situation worse. The human agricultural world of New Sejong lies directly in the Devourer's path, General Thakmor noted, pointing to a blue marker on the display. 2 million civilians, mostly farmers and their families. Evacuation time? Vexthara asked. Impossible. The transport fleets are already committed to other operations. We could evacuate perhaps 50,000 aliens currently visiting the planet, but not the human population. Vexthara studied the display. New Sejong was perfectly positioned to slow the Devourer advance. The machines would have to consume the world completely before moving on, giving the Federation precious hours to prepare defenses elsewhere. It's an acceptable loss, she decided. One primitive agricultural world for the chance to save core systems with billions of citizens. Min felt something cold settle in his stomach. Chancellor, New Sejong has 2 million human civilians. Families, children, elderly people who have never harmed anyone. And core worlds have billions of citizens from dozens of species, Vexthara replied without looking at him. The mathematics are simple. Vex. You're talking about deliberately abandoning human civilians to die, Park said, her voice perfectly level. I'm talking about saving the galaxy, Vexthara snapped. Your people should be honored to make such a contribution. Min stood slowly. Something in his movement made several alien officers glance in his direction, though none of them seemed particularly concerned by his reaction. Chancellor, you cannot use human civilians as acceptable losses. This crosses every line we have drawn, violates every principle we have asked you to respect. Your principles mean nothing when extinction threatens, General Thakmor growled. One agricultural world is a small price for saving civilization. We evacuate the aliens on New Sejong immediately, Vexthara ordered. The human population remains to slow the Devourer advance. This decision is final. Dr. Yoon watched Min's face carefully. She had studied human psychology for decades, and she recognized the signs of something dangerous happening behind his diplomatic mask. The careful control that had defined human behavior for 15 years was beginning to crack. This is not acceptable, Min said quietly. We will not allow you to sacrifice our people. The command center fell silent. For the first time since joining the Federation, a human representative had used the word allow when addressing alien leadership. The implications were lost on most of the aliens present, but Dr. Yoon understood perfectly. You will not allow? Vexthara's crystal form flared bright red with indignation. You forget your place, human. Your species contributes medical aid and supply logistics. You do not make military decisions for the Federation. We have asked you for 15 years to respect certain boundaries, Min continued, his voice still perfectly calm. We have explained that there are lines you should not cross. You have chosen to ignore those warnings. Because your warnings are meaningless, General Thakmor roared. What will you do? File a diplomatic protest? Write a strongly worded letter? Your people are sheep, pretending to be wolves. Captain Park stepped forward, and something in her movement made the nearest alien officers instinctively move away from her. General, I would suggest you reconsider that assessment. Or what? Vexthara demanded. You'll stop providing medical supplies? You'll withdraw your logistics support? Go ahead. See how much the galaxy notices when the weakest species takes its toys and goes home. The evacuation order was implemented within hours. Federation transport ships arrived at New Sejong and began evacuating alien citizens, scientists, traders, diplomatic personnel, and their families. The human population was informed that no evacuation would be available due to resource limitations and tactical requirements. Min received the final transmission from New Sejong 3 hours before the Devourers arrived. Governor Lee Sang-min appeared on the communication screen, his weathered face calm despite the approaching death. "Ambassador," Lee said quietly, "we understand the situation. The Federation has made its choice. We want you to know that we don't blame you for this." Behind the governor, Min could see families gathering in the colony's central square. Children played while their parents organized what defense they could manage. Elderly farmers stood alongside young teachers, all of them preparing to face an enemy they had no hope of defeating. "We've sent our final agricultural reports to Earth," Lee continued. "The wheat strain we developed here could feed billions. Maybe someone will continue our work after we're gone." The transmission ended just as the first Devourer ships appeared in New Sejong's sky. What followed was broadcast live to the Federation Command Center. The machines descended on the peaceful agricultural world like a plague, converting everything they touched into more of themselves. The human colonists fought back with farming equipment and improvised weapons, protecting their families for as long as possible. Min watched 2 million people die because the Federation had decided their lives were acceptable losses. He watched families make their last stands in wheat fields that would never be harvested. He watched children who had never known war-face machines that devoured everything they touched. When the transmission finally ended, the command center was silent. New Sejong was gone, consumed completely by the Devourer advance. The machines had been slowed by exactly 4 hours. Min stood in that silence, his diplomatic mask finally falling away. When he spoke, his voice was perfectly calm, but everyone in the command center could hear something different underneath the words. "Chancellor Vexthara," he said quietly, "you have made us mad." The alien leaders looked at him with confusion. They had expected anger, shouting, perhaps an emotional breakdown. Instead, they saw a human who seemed more controlled than ever, as if some internal switch had been flipped. "Your anger means nothing," Vexthara replied, though something in her tone suggested she was less certain than before. "One primitive world for the galaxy is an acceptable trade. Your people died as heroes." Captain Park activated her communication unit. Her voice, when she spoke, was clinical and precise. "Command, this is Park Sujin. Authorization: Whiskey Echo 77. Operation Longinus is now active." Dr. Yoon began documenting what she knew would be an unprecedented xenopsychological event. For 15 years, she had watched humans carefully control their responses to every provocation, every insult, every dismissal. She had theorized about what might happen if that control was ever removed. But she had never expected to witness it. Admiral Koss, who had been monitoring the situation from his position with the military command, stepped forward. "Ambassador Min, what is Operation Longinus?" Min turned to face the massive Brutarian officer. Something in his expression made the Admiral take an involuntary step backward. "Admiral, for 15 years we have warned this galaxy about our nature. We have explained our history, our capabilities, our potential. We have begged you not to make us mad. You have chosen not to listen." "What are you talking about?" General Thakmore demanded. "You're a supply and medical support species. You have no significant military capabilities." Park finished her communication with Human Command and turned to face the alien leadership. "General, respectfully, you have no idea what you're talking about." The command center's displays began updating as human military assets across the galaxy received new orders. The language in the communications was clinical, precise, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who understood military doctrine. Min addressed the Federation leadership one final time. "We joined this organization hoping to be wrong about galactic civilization. We wanted to believe that intelligence and cooperation could triumph over the violence that has defined so much of our history. We have spent 15 years trying to prove that restraint is strength, that mercy is wisdom." He paused, looking around the command center at aliens who were beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. "You have forced us to demonstrate why those beliefs require such careful protection. You have made us remember what we spent centuries trying to forget. Alarms began sounding throughout the command center as human fleets across the galaxy began moving with sudden, terrifying coordination. Ships that had served in support roles for 15 years were revealing capabilities that made no sense according to Federation intelligence assessments. "What's happening?" Chancellor Vexthara whispered. Min's answer was simple, but it carried the weight of human history behind it. "You're about to learn why we tried so hard to stay peaceful." What followed was not rage. What followed was something far more terrifying than the emotional outbursts the aliens had expected. It was cold, calculated, methodical warfare executed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of controlled violence. The transformation began within hours of Operation Longinus activation. Human fleets across the galaxy, previously relegated to support and logistics roles, suddenly emerged as the most sophisticated military force the Federation had ever seen. Ships that had seemed modestly equipped revealed hidden weapon systems and defensive capabilities that made veteran military officers question everything they thought they knew about human technology. Admiral Koss stood in the Federation Command Center, watching the tactical displays update with growing amazement. Human forces were moving with a precision that defied everything he understood about military coordination. "How are they synchronizing operations across such vast distances?" he asked his tactical staff. None of them had an answer. The human fleets were operating as if connected by some invisible network, each group perfectly coordinated with others thousands of light years away. Their movements were so precise that they seemed to be following a plan that had been prepared for years. Captain Park Soo-jin, now wearing the insignia of Admiral Park, stood before the main tactical display as if she had been born to command galactic-scale operations. Her transformation from quiet military advisor to supreme battlefield commander had happened in the space of hours, and the alien observers were beginning to realize they had never truly understood what they were looking at. "Admiral Park," Chancellor Vexthara said nervously, "your forces are moving without Federation authorization. You must coordinate with our military command." Park didn't even turn around. "Chancellor, with respect, your military command has proven itself incapable of effective coordination. We are now operating under human strategic doctrine. You can't simply take command of Federation operations," General Thakmor protested. "We're not taking command," Park replied calmly. "We're demonstrating why you should have listened to us 15 years ago." The first engagement came when human forces encountered a devourer fleet that had been terrorizing the inner systems for days. The aliens watching the tactical feeds expected to see another Federation defeat. Instead, they witnessed something that challenged every assumption they had made about both human capabilities and devourer invincibility. The human fleet did not charge into battle with the emotional fury that had characterized alien tactics. Instead, they approached the devourers with mathematical precision, their ships moving in formations that seemed to have been calculated down to the meter. When combat began, the difference was immediately apparent. "They're not fighting the machines," Dr. Yoon observed, studying the tactical data. "They're conducting a surgical operation." She was right. The human forces were dissecting the devourer fleet with clinical accuracy. Rather than trying to destroy the machines through brute force, they were targeting specific systems in precise sequences, systematically shutting down devourer capabilities before moving to the next target. Admiral Koss watched in fascination as human ships executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. Their coordination is perfect. How are they anticipating enemy movements so accurately? Quote, Admiral Koss. Quote, Ambassador Min, still present in the command center despite the changed circumstances, finally answered the question that had been troubling the Admiral for years. "Because we studied you, Admiral. All of you. Every species, every military doctrine, every psychological profile. We learned how you think, how you fight, how you react under pressure. But the Devourers aren't an alien species," Vexthara protested. "They're machines. Machines created by organic intelligence, Park replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. Machines that learned their tactics from observing galactic warfare. We simply traced their strategic thinking back to its source. The implications of this statement began to sink in among the alien observers. The humans had not just studied individual species. They had analyzed the fundamental patterns of galactic civilization. They understood how different forms of intelligence approached problems, how they could be predicted, how they could be countered. "You've been preparing for this," General Talkmore said slowly. "Not just for the Devourers. For us." Min turned to face the Brutarian general. "We prepared for the day when galactic civilization might force us to stop holding back. We hoped that day would never come." The tactical display updated again as more human fleets engaged Devourer forces across the galaxy. The pattern was the same everywhere. Precise, methodical dismantling of machine forces that had seemed unstoppable just days before. But the real revelation came when human forces began demonstrating capabilities that went beyond simple tactical superiority. In the Kepler system, human engineers somehow reversed the programming of captured Devourer units, turning them against their own fleets. In the Vega sector, human scientists deployed a weapon that seemed to disrupt the machine's fundamental operating principles. Across the galaxy, human forces were not just defeating the Devourers, they were turning the machine's own capabilities against them. "How is this possible?" Chancellor Vexthera whispered, watching as another Devourer fleet fell to human precision strikes. Dr. Yoon looked up from her analysis. "Because they never stopped thinking like apex predators. We mistook their restraint for weakness. We thought their ethics made them soft. We didn't realize that their moral systems were the only thing standing between us and this." Admiral Koss was beginning to understand the scope of his miscalculation. "Your species has been capable of this level of coordination all along? Since before we joined the Federation," Park confirmed. "We studied every species, every military doctrine, every psychological profile in this galaxy. We prepared for scenarios that we hoped would never occur." "But why?" Vexthara demanded. "Why prepare for war if you wanted peace?" Min's answer was simple but carried the weight of human history. "Because we learned long ago that the best way to preserve peace is to be absolutely prepared for war. Because we understood that strength unused is far more powerful than strength displayed." The tide of the war was turning with shocking speed. Devourer fleets that had seemed unstoppable were being systematically eliminated by human forces, operating with a level of coordination that defied galactic understanding. But the aliens were beginning to realize that the humans were revealing only a fraction of their true capabilities. "This is impossible," General Thakmor muttered, staring at reports of human victories streaming in from across the galaxy. "We didn't hide it," Park replied. "We simply never had reason to use it." Admiral Koss felt a chill run down his massive spine as the full implications became clear. "How much of your military capacity have we actually seen?" Park's smile was cold and professional. "Admiral, what you're seeing now is human forces operating under humanitarian constraints. We're still following rules of engagement designed to minimize collateral damage and preserve as much of galactic civilization as possible." The Admiral stared at her. "You mean you're still holding back?" "We're always holding back," Min said quietly. "That's what you never understood. What you're seeing now is not human military capability unleashed. It's human military capability applied with surgical precision to achieve specific objectives while maintaining specific ethical standards." The command center fell silent as this statement sank in. The humans were systematically dismantling the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced, and they were still operating under constraints designed to protect their enemies. But the real demonstration came when human forces encountered the Devourer core intelligence itself. The machine consciousness that had consumed 17 worlds and threatened to devour the galaxy was finally located in a massive construct hidden in deep space. What the aliens watched next would fundamentally change their understanding of what human beings were capable of when they stopped asking nicely. The human assault on the Devourer core was not an attack. It was a master class in strategic warfare. Admiral Park orchestrated the operation with the calm precision of a surgeon, coordinating thousands of ships across multiple star systems to create a perfect tactical solution. The Devourers fought back with everything they had learned from consuming galactic civilizations. They deployed strategies copied from Brutarian aggression, Zeltharian precision, Altarian coordination, and dozens of other species. But the humans had studied all of those strategies and understood them better than their creators did. "They're not just winning," Dr. Yoon observed in wonder. "They're teaching us how much we never understood about ourselves." The final phase of the operation was almost anticlimactic. Human forces didn't destroy the Devourer core intelligence. They captured it intact, reverse-engineered its technology in real time, and turned its own systems against the remaining machine forces scattered across the galaxy. When the last Devourer unit went silent, the galaxy faced a new reality. The greatest threat in its history had been eliminated, not through desperate sacrifice or emotional fury, but through the careful application of human strategic doctrine by a species that had been preparing for this moment since they first encountered galactic civilization. In the sudden silence of the command center, Chancellor Vex Thara found her voice. "What are you?" Admiral Park turned to face her, and for the first time, her expression showed something other than cold professionalism. It showed pity. "We," she said quietly, "are what you forced us to remember we could be." 6 months after Operation Longinus began, the galaxy was at peace for the first time in decades. The Devourer threat had been completely eliminated, not just defeated but systematically dismantled and converted into defensive systems that now protected every Federation world. The machines that had once consumed planets now served as guardians, their programming rewritten by human engineers who seemed to understand artificial intelligence better than the civilizations that had created it. The Federation Council chamber looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed. When Ambassador Min Jae-sung spoke, the chamber fell silent. When Admiral Park Soo-jin made tactical recommendations, they were implemented without question or debate. The casual dismissal of human input had been replaced by something approaching reverence, though Min found this new dynamic almost as troubling as the old one. Dr. Yoon Hae-won sat in her usual observation position, documenting what she considered the most significant xenopsychological transformation in galactic history. The change in alien behavior toward humans was complete and permanent. Fear had replaced contempt, but understanding had not replaced ignorance. The Council recognizes Ambassador Min Jae-sung of the Human Federation, announced the Chamber's protocol system, using the new formal title that had been created without human request or approval. Min stood slowly, noting how differently the Chamber responded to his movements now. Where once aliens had continued their conversations during human speeches, now every delegate gave him their complete attention. The change was unsettling in its completeness. "Honorable delegates," Min began, "I want to address some misconceptions that have developed since the end of the Devourer conflict." Chancellor Vex Thara's crystalline form had taken on new patterns since the war ended. The confident reds and golds she once displayed had been replaced by muted blues and greens that suggested permanent uncertainty. "Ambassador, please proceed." "First," Min said carefully, "humanity did not seek the role we currently occupy in Federation affairs. We did not desire military supremacy or political dominance. We wanted what we have always wanted: to be part of a galactic community that chooses cooperation over conflict." The chamber remained silent. The easy laughter that had once greeted human statements was gone, replaced by careful attention to every word. "Second, what you witnessed during the recent crisis was not humanity embracing our true nature. It was humanity temporarily setting aside the restraints we chose to impose on ourselves. There is an important difference." Dr. Yoon watched the alien delegates' reactions with professional fascination. They were listening to Min's words, but they didn't understand them. The concept of chosen restraint was still beyond their comprehension. Admiral Koss raised one massive hand for permission to speak. The Brutarian officer had been profoundly changed by his experience working alongside human forces. Ambassador Min, may I ask a direct question? Of course, Admiral. During the war, human forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to defy everything we understood about your species. How long have your people possessed such military sophistication? Min considered his answer carefully. Admiral, human military doctrine has been developing for thousands of years. We brought that knowledge with us when we joined the Federation. We simply chose not to use it unless absolutely necessary. But why? Demanded General Thakmor, though his tone lacked the aggressive certainty it had once carried. Why hide such capabilities? Because, Park said, standing to address the chamber. The moment we revealed them, everything would change. The galaxy would never again see us as partners in peace. We would become either objects of fear or tools of war. The truth of this statement was evident in the chamber around them. The easy camaraderie that had once existed between humans and other species was gone. In its place was a careful respect, born of fear rather than understanding. We studied your species for the same reason we studied military doctrine, Min continued. Not because we planned to use that knowledge against you, but because we hoped to find ways to work with you without ever needing to reveal what we're capable of when restraints are removed. A new delegate, representing one of the worlds that had been saved during the Devourer crisis, stood to speak. Ambassador, my world owes its existence to human military intervention. We are grateful beyond words. But we must ask, what do humans want from the galaxy now? It was the question that had been underlying every interaction since the war ended. The aliens had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. Now they waited to learn what price would be demanded for that salvation. Min's answer surprised everyone in the chamber. We want what we have always wanted, to prove that strength's highest use is choosing not to use it. To demonstrate that the greatest victory is the war that never needs to be fought. You want nothing? Chancellor Vexthera asked, her confusion evident in the chaotic patterns of light playing across her crystalline form. We want to rebuild what was damaged? Park replied. We want to return to the Federation we joined 15 years ago, where different species work together to solve problems instead of creating them. Dr. Yoon understood what her colleagues were attempting, but she doubted it would work. The psychological transformation in the alien species was too complete. They had seen humanity remove its restraints, and that knowledge would color every future interaction. Admiral Koss voiced what many delegates were thinking. But how can we return to the way things were? How can we ignore what we've learned about human capabilities? By understanding why those capabilities exist, Min replied. Admiral, every human child learns the history of our species. We know what we're capable of when we abandon restraint. We know how easily cooperation can become domination, how quickly protection can become conquest. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had once mocked his warnings. We learned to fear ourselves before we learned to fear others. That's why we chose restraint. That's why we built the ethical systems you dismissed as weakness. The rebuilding of New Sejong had become symbolic of the new galactic order. Human engineering, no longer constrained by the pretense of limited capability, was creating something magnificent from the ashes of the destroyed colony. But more importantly, other species were contributing to the project, working under human guidance, but as partners rather than subjects. The memorial to the 2 million civilians who had died there was built by Zeltharian crystal shapers, using techniques shared freely by human architects. The agricultural systems were designed by Altarian bioengineers working with human scientists. Even the Brutarians contributed. Their strength and endurance helping to build structures that would last for millennia. It's not the same, Doctor, Yoon observed, watching the reconstruction efforts through the command center's displays. The cooperation is real, but it's built on fear rather than respect. Min nodded sadly. That's what we were trying to avoid. We wanted to be partners, not guardians. But perhaps this is better than the alternative, Park suggested. Better that they cooperate out of fear than fight out of pride. Is it? Min wondered. Have we saved galactic civilization? Or have we simply imposed our version of it? The question would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. They had revealed their true capabilities to save civilization from extinction. But in doing so, they had fundamentally changed what that civilization could become. In the weeks that followed, a new pattern emerged. Other species brought their problems to human attention, seeking guidance and solutions from the people who had solved the unsolvable. Trade disputes, territorial conflicts, resource allocation issues all were presented to human administrators who found themselves reluctantly serving as galactic mediators. We've become what we feared, Min confided to Park during one of their private meetings. Not conquerors, but the species that everyone else depends on to fix their problems. Perhaps that's not entirely bad, Park replied. At least this way. Problems get solved through negotiation, rather than warfare. But both of them knew that the galaxy they had helped save was not the galaxy they had hoped to join. The dream of true cooperation between equals had been replaced by the reality of cooperation between the powerful and the fearful. The final Federation Council session of the year was different from any that had come before. When issues arose, delegates looked to the human section for guidance. When conflicts emerged, they sought human mediation. When decisions needed to be made, they waited for human approval. This is not what we wanted, Min said quietly to the assembled delegates. We did not seek to become your leaders or your guardians. We wanted to be your partners. But how can we be partners with beings of such capability? Asked the Serpentine delegate, his scaled form trembling slightly. How can we work as equals with those who could dominate us completely if they chose to? Min's answer reflected the tragedy of humanity's position in the new galactic order. The same way we hoped you would work with us when you believed we were weak. Through choice. Through respect. Through the understanding that different capabilities do not mean different worth. The session ended with the same question that had haunted humanity since their restraints were lifted. Could the galaxy ever again see them as anything other than the species that had chosen mercy when they could have chosen conquest? As the delegates filed out of the chamber, a young alien observer approached Min with a question that captured the essence of the new reality. Ambassador, will humans always protect the galaxy this way? Min considered his response carefully. We will protect what we can, when we must. But our greatest hope is for a galaxy that doesn't need protection. A civilization mature enough to solve its own problems, without forcing anyone to become what they'd rather not be. The universe had finally understood why humans cautioned against making them mad. The question that remained was whether understanding would lead to wisdom, or whether the galaxy would forever be divided between those who could destroy and those who could only hope for mercy. As Min looked out at the stars through the chamber's great windows, he reflected on humanity's greatest victory and its greatest loss. They had saved galactic civilization, but in doing so, they had sacrificed the dream of truly joining it as equals. The galaxy was safe. The galaxy was at peace. But the galaxy would never again be innocent of what lurked beneath humanity's careful restraint. Perhaps, Min thought, that was the real lesson the universe needed to learn. That true strength was not in the capacity for violence, but in the wisdom to choose peace, even when you could choose otherwise. That the greatest warriors were those who never wanted to fight at all.